We're going to be looking at the Project Star Dossier today. So they are seeking to raise a total of $100 million through the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. It's Jamaica's first social IPO. So we're going to go through the dossier, try to understand a little bit about what they're trying to do, the project, how they're going to be using the funds, and just about anything else we can learn about the project. Now, this is not exactly like an IPO, and that's why we're going to try to use a similar format, but just understand that it's not going to be exactly matched to some of the things that we may talk about. Now, there are some similarities, and we'll talk about those, but just understand that there may be some nuances just based on the type of offer. So that's what we're going to try and go through, and as best as possible, just to understand what we're working with here. So let's jump right into it.
Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.
All right, welcome back. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for the ability to produce wealth. Lord, we pray that as we go through this session, that everyone who watches it will be greatly impacted. They will be able to make a decision for themselves as to how they should manage their investments, etc. We pray, Lord, for your many blessings in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Welcome, guys. I know this is a little bit earlier than we usually go live, but I wanted to actually do this session before we had the spaces that we're going to have later today with the Project Star team and some other stakeholders. So if you're able to join us on Twitter for that session, go ahead. If you missed this, like let's say you're watching this on a replay and that has passed, what we'll try to do is if there's any additional information that is shared on the session that maybe isn't covered through this review now, we'll maybe post that in our Telegram group. So be sure to join us on Telegram as well. Okay, so let us go right into it. So this is the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange's website. I would have alluded to this site in my previous video on Project Star. If you missed it, I'll try to link it in the description, but just search for our most recent videos and you'll see it. So this is the Project Star project that's a part of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. We're seeing actually they've been able to raise 137 million so far, and they're seeking to raise, at least for this year, 250 million. So they raised 137 million of 250, right? And then there's some background here which would have gone through before. And then under the documents section, if you click on this link, you can download the document, which is what I'm going to open here on the screen, right? So that's how you access the document that we'll be going through. And what I'll try to do is, as I said, just focus on similar areas that would look at for prospectus, but it's not, just understand that we'll get into the nuances later, right? So for those who are not familiar with Project Star, let me just kind of read through some of the initial pages here. Project Star believes that working together, we can transform Jamaica into a place where everyone is valued and has the opportunity to thrive. Project Star is a social and economic development initiative that was created by the PSOJ in partnership with the JCF and driven by communities to bring about societal transformation through targeted interventions in under-resourced areas of Jamaica. Now, if you're familiar with L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, we're very big on outreach. It's something that we try to have as a part of the fabric of our community. Essentially, that's what Project Star is seeking to do as well, to transform our nation through targeted interventions in the communities that they believe if they do that work, it can have, island-wide impact, right? So let's go through here. So it says here it's an undertaking of the social transformation and renewal foundation. That's how you get STAR, a company duly incorporated pursuant to the Companies Act of Jamaica and registered under the Charities Act of Jamaica. So it's a registered charity. So any donation that goes to the project, if you're a company, for example, that wants to earmark it as a charitable donation, you'd have the opportunity to do so because they are a registered charity. So the invitation opens June 22nd. That would be later on this week. I believe that's Thursday. And the invitation closes August 18th. Now they do have the opportunity, unlike an IPO, where if you're seeking to raise 100 million and you raise more, you have to give back that money. They do have the opportunity to pretty much take in as much money as is submitted, right? So there's no excess, so to speak. They'll be able to keep everything for the project, right? And that's what I was just alluding to here, with the ability to accept applications in excess of 100 million, right? So it says here the company invites applicants for participation in 100 million Project Star social stock. Each application for Project Star social stock is subject to a minimum of 500 social stock. So that's the equivalent of 500 Jamaican dollars to be a part of this initiative. The company reserves the right or the ability to accept applications in excess. And then we spoke about that before. Let's move on. So this is a snapshot of the project as at February 2023. And so I'm actually not going to get into that right now because I believe that we would have touched on it a little bit already in the previous video. Again, if you missed that, please check it out. In terms of the page of contents, there are some key areas that I'll go through. So the letter to prospective investors, we're going to go through that. We're going to look at the invitation itself, maybe see if there's any more details that we can find out there. We're going to look at the funding plan and the use of proceeds. We're going to actually spend the most time there. And then we'll talk about their key performance indicators, right? And then if we have enough time, because we're trying to actually do this review in about 30 minutes, we'll look at the 5-year budget, right? Because we have to look to see what their plans are for the use of the monies that they'll be getting in. And then for any other questions, if it's something that's not covered, as I said, just be sure to leave it in the comments. And usually what we try to do is get to those, right? So again, I'm going to take it for granted that you're familiar with it or you've caught our last video. If you hadn't, then please go through this summary here, right? So let's go to the letter to prospective investors. So it says here, we invite you to consider investing in a better Jamaica by making a financial donation to Project Star. In July 2022, the PSOJ, in partnership with the JCF and in collaboration with Target Communities, launched Project Star, a social and economic development initiative aimed at facilitating societal transformation through targeted interventions in under-resourced areas of Jamaica. All right, so over the course of a 5-year period, which is the length of this project, as you know, projects have start and end dates. It will be implemented in 10 under-resourced communities, which are plagued with violence and crime. It is aimed at producing safer, more resilient communities with reduced levels of crime and violence. And if you checked out their press release that they did last week, I think that might be on YouTube. They went into the difference between crime and violence and why they think both are important things to focus on. So it says the following factors are required to facilitate sustained change. So they're saying here, national effort, implementation of community-owned and led structure, employment and economic opportunities within communities, strengthened police and community relations, multi-sectoral collaboration. So these are the areas that they think will lead to change in terms of the country as a whole, and these are the things that they'll typically target for the communities that they go into. So it says, accordingly, Project Star requires a collective societal approach to achieve improved social outcomes, reduce levels of violence, and sustained positive change in communities across Jamaica. So the estimated cost of the project is $2 billion or 13 million US, right? And we invite you to partner with us initially to raise a minimum of 100 million. So when we get later on in the document, it's going to show how much they're seeking to raise per year. Over the 5 years, they're estimating that they'll need $2 billion to complete the project successfully. So that's what you're seeing here, right? It says by way of listing on the JSSE, and that's the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, not the same as the Jamaica Stock Exchange. It's intended that there will be 3 raises by way of the JSE over a 3-year time frame, which will aggregate to a total of 650 million. So they're hoping to raise 100, then I believe another 250, which would be 350, and then another 300, if I'm not mistaken. But again, that's later on in the document, so the exact numbers will be there. And the funding plan is in section 9. So we'll review that. So it says by participating, and this is, you know, when persons are asking what's in it for them, it says by participating, you will help us to realize the vision of working together to create a Jamaica where everyone is valued and has an opportunity to thrive. So this essentially is calling on persons who want to invest in the country, invest in reducing crime and violence, invest in creating opportunities for others to partner with them for this project, right? And it says to invest in Project STAR, please see section 8. Again, when we get there, we'll go through it, right? So let me pause here a sec. I see Anthony in the comments here. So Anthony, I see, let me bring up the first comment, right? So you're saying here, Anthony, that this is just another scheme that will only benefit the elites. Nothing meaningful will be achieved and only trickle-down effect. How will those people be held accountable for the monies that will be given? No, so the last part of your statement, no, I can't speak to the first part, but the last part in terms of how they will be held accountable, I think that's a legitimate question to ask, right? So one of the things they have said is that they'll be reporting on the project on a quarterly basis. So similar to how you'd have a quarterly report from a listed company, you'll have a quarterly documentation as to how the project will be managed, how the funds will be utilized, etc. So that's one way that you can hold them accountable for how the funds are used. In terms of other ways, other measures to manage and control the project, now that's just something that you have to essentially ask them the question, as I said, and see if you believe they have the right framework in place to manage those monies. But it would be no different than any other fundraising project where a company or an organization has a plan. They present that plan to donors and potential investors, and at that point you have to take the company at their word that they're able to use the funds in the way that they say. Now things will happen, and of course that's for them to report on it, but because they'll be reporting on it quarterly, you have an opportunity to see how things are being managed throughout, and not necessarily you give them $2 billion and then wait to see what they do with it, right? After the 5 years, you'll be able to see that progress over each quarter, right? So you're saying here that the PSOJ and GSAF promise the same thing through Zozo. When you live in the inner city, you will know how this game is played and how they will use the less fortunate. Now, again, unfortunately, I can't speak to that. And the way that I think about it is, I mean, it would be good to be able to have some tangible way, maybe to have data being presented maybe before and after, you know, understand how the resources are going to be used to effect change, etc. But those are the kind of things that again, I believe in. If you have an issue with the proposed solution, either propose something else or provide or assist in getting the thing accomplished, right? So again, I can't speak to that. But I do encourage you, if you're going to be on the spaces, to join, ask your questions, etc., and see. If you choose to participate, great. If not, then you definitely reserve that right. But I can't speak to what I'm not aware of. Let me see here. Okay, so I see your other comments, and the final one I'll say here is, as you rightfully said, hope. What recourse do we have if it's not running properly? Now again, valid questions, Anthony, but again, that's where I think for every person who will participate, who has donated so far, you have essentially every 3 months to look as to how the project is being reported. From what I've seen in terms of asking them questions, they seem to be very well organized and have been able to answer all the questions that have been posed, whether through our own questions or through the public, etc. I'll share some of the concerns that I had initially in terms of some of the questions that I would have asked last week. And I have some questions that I'm preparing to ask on the spaces later as somebody who would be, participating, etc. But again, I mean, I don't know what else to say to that. So Marlene is saying they have enough rich friends to ask for donations, not my hard-earned cash. Maybe when I see real change. Okay, so Marlene, so I'll ask you, what would real change look like for you, right? But guys, so again, I take the approach now. I'm not saying this in defense of Project Star. I'm saying this the very same way I would say of any initiative, right? Because we have raised funds as L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest as a community before. What we have tried to do is report on everything we've done. So we've showed how much money we've raised, what we have purchased, how much it has come up to. But there's still an element of trust because the persons would have donated in our previous projects. There is an element of trust to say, well, L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest is going to use that money wisely for the purposes for which we had said we're raising the money for, right? So there is going to be some element of trust that you are trusting to the person or the entity is going to utilize the resources well. Now, if you don't trust this entity for whatever reason, as I said, ask those questions. If you're still not satisfied, you do reserve the right not to. But I would say I always take the approach of get my questions answered and see how best I can be a part of the solution to help accomplish the goal, right? Marlene is saying what they said they're going to do. So Marlene, that's what we're going through, right? That's what we're going through. And so what they have done is they've gone through, the project is actually approaching its second year. They have raised funds before. They have had, they've started to work with some communities already, right? So that was some of the things that I would have kind of gone over so far. So if you look at their website, there's actually the quarterly report for February that goes through the things that they've done so far, right? So so these are some of the highlights of what they have done so far, right? So they've gone into 2 or 3 communities. So they have identified 3 communities that they're going to work with in the first year. They've gone into 2 of them. A third will be approached soon. They've had 1,700 community members consulted. So what they try to do is have activities, talk to the community members, see what the needs are, and then organize activities or engagement around accomplishing the goals that they're set out to, right? And these are some of the things that they've done in terms of social inclusion. So they said 205 children have been provided with school meals daily, 87 youth involved in community sports, 15 unattached youth streamed into STAR programs, and 10 referrals of the fathers to the PATH program, and so on, right? So these are some of the projects these are some of the activities that they have done so far that, again, if you want more details on, you can get that. So we read the letter to prospective investors. We're going to look at the invitation itself now. So let's go to that. All right, I'll get to the, yeah, this is where I am. So I'll go through here, but I'll just comment on this page since we're going through it. And guys, I'll get to some of your other questions. Yeah, so I'll get to the comments, but keep the comments and questions coming, and I'll get to them soon. So what they're doing here, it's being done through the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. Most, if not all, of the brokers have come on board to work with them. I think it's mostly brokers with online platforms that you can use to make the process easier. But essentially, there's no lead broker in this case. There are co-brokers. These are the ones listed here. So Barita, FHC, GK, JN, Mayberry, NCB Capital Markets, Proven Wealth, etc. So if you already have accounts, well, I'm seeing Sagicor, VM Wealth, and JMMB. So if you have accounts at any of these brokers already and you wish to participate, you can essentially do that. And okay, so let's go through the invitation itself. I believe we would have gone through the first part already, so you should be familiar with that. So the application list will open at 9 a.m. on the opening date, and the invitation will close at 4 p.m. on the closing date. Now, I don't think we'll have an issue here in terms of this offer closing early. I think they're gonna let it run its full course to see how much they can indeed raise. So it says here they have the opportunity, of course, to postpone the opening date if they need to, close the application list at any time without prior notice, and some other terms here depending on what they think is best or how the submissions are going, etc. And then it says here that the company intends to list on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange for the listing of the Project Star social stock, and to make such application as soon as is conveniently possible following the closing date. The outcome of such an application will depend on the company meeting all the admission criteria of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, and the statement of the company's intention is not a guarantee against standard things here, right? Summary of information. So this, I believe you can go through. Funding plan, right? So for those who are concerned, like how much they want to raise, how they're going to use the money, etc., that's what we're going to get into now. So it says the estimated cost of the implementation of the project is 2 billion Jamaican dollars. The project will be funded through a mixed financing model. So they're looking to do a number of things, and they're listed here. So they're raising through the JSSE. The target is 650 million. They've been working with corporate donors already. The target is 500 million. They're going to try to do diaspora crowdfunding. Target is 350 million, and then some other organizations for 600 million. So I actually think that they have an opportunity here to actually increase this target for the diaspora. I imagine that there may be companies or individuals outside of Jamaica who would want to be a part of this type of initiative. So I mean, they may have an opportunity to get more than the 350 million here, but I guess they would have done the projections based on what they thought was possible. So for 2022, which is the year past, this was their target, 150 million from corporate donors. You remember on the first screen that I showed you, they would have raised 137 million so far. And for this year, which is 2023, the target is 400 million, 100 through the JSSE. That's why we're reading through this review now. 100 million from corporate, 100 from the diaspora, and the other 100 from multilateral, right? So over the next 5 years, this is their plan, and that's what we have here. In terms of the breakdown now and use of proceeds, and those who are interested as to how the money will be used, this is a further breakdown. Let me know if you can see it clearly. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit so we can read it. All right, so what I am interested in, and this is one of the things that I saw as I was going through this, I would love to know, for example, how were the numbers calculated, right? In terms of how much they're seeking to raise under each theme and why. So that's definitely one of the questions that I have to see, you know, how were the calculations done, just in general, based on how projections work, right? What sort of wiggle room do they have in terms of when they get to year 3, will the numbers be revised yearly? Those are, you know, some of the things I'm interested in. So let's talk about, I'll just single out one here. So for example, they have training in financial literacy, acquisition of formal documents for conducting business and opening bank accounts. So my understanding of how they're going to do this project is they're going to work with, for example, subject matter experts in a particular field. So let's say that they want to work with a company that does training in financial literacy, a company that maybe helps persons to open business accounts or register their companies, etc. So they're saying here that they have a budget for this. I believe this is year 1. So they have a budget in year 1 of 2.5 million to execute this training. Now, it doesn't say how many persons they're hoping to train. That's also one of the questions that I would have. How many persons are you going to reach with this 2.5 million? How would that be managed, right? Then the next year, it's 5 million. And then the third year, it's 12.5 million. And then, so the total that they're raising for this line item, so to speak, would be 20 million, right? So that's how they've gone through to break it down. So again, a lot of these are based on my understanding of how it will work, is that they'll try to work with persons who are known to do that thing, and then organize the different events or activities, and then it's executed within that budget. But what I would want to know again is how the budget was derived in the first place, right? So is it that you consulted persons to get that figure, or that figure is an estimate and you're hoping to execute it within that? Because if you understand how projects work, you have a set timeline, you have a set budget. If you exceed timeline or budget, then the project would need to be adjusted. So either raise more money, ask for more time, etc. So those are some of the things I'd be interested in learning more about, right? So let's see. This is speaking to key personnel now of Project STAR. Again, most of these persons will actually be on the spaces tonight, so you'll be able to hear from them directly. There's also an oversight committee, and those persons are named here. And then, of course, there's a project implementation unit. So these are the persons here. So this is project information now. So this is kind of speaking to the background as to why I think this project was needed. And the implications of the current state of Jamaica. So why they're thinking that this project is needed. So fractured homes with high incidences of intimate partner violence, educational gaps which include unequally resourced school, which results in varied educational quality in schools, large percentage of the population being unskilled or untrained, poor infrastructure, which includes poor sanitation, unsafe housing, etc. Things that we know about and have heard about on the news and in the papers for years, right? So that's the background as to why they're doing this project, right? So their vision now to combat some of the things that we just read is this here, right? So three key things that they want to do. They want to develop mainstream approaches to community development, which are inclusive, rigorous, and integrated. They want to create communities which are safer and more resilient with improved social outcomes and reduced levels of violence. And they want to ensure project-wide stakeholders are more purposeful, better informed, and equipped for contributions to transformational change, right? Let me get that link for you. I'm going to share the link in the chat for Deborah. I think the link should be in the description of the video, Deborah. So please check. See, you're on LinkedIn. Check in the description if you see the link there. I placed it in it. All right. So so the objectives here are then broken out, and then they show how are they going to be executing that particular objective. So that's what you're seeing here. All right, so we're gonna go through this a little bit later, but we mentioned it mentioned earlier that they've gone into 2 or 3 communities so far. So they've gone down to East downtown Kingston, and I spoke a little bit about that last week in terms of somebody who's a part of the project team was from the East downtown area. So that person served as like the liaison for the community. And each community has a crime rank. And I don't remember what VRI means. I'm going to see if I can find it referenced here. But there's a crime rank and a VRI rank, and they make the decision to go into the community based on that, right? They're also trying to work with communities that persons in the team may be familiar with already to make it easier. And they also said that what they try to do is have the community own the project, right? So when, if they have to maybe have persons move on to another community, then the project is not, or the initiatives or activities aren't, dismantled, right? So let me see here. I feel like I maybe need to go through these a little bit separately, but we are going to be having an interview with them. Thank you, Renee. Violence-related injury, right? Yes, perfect. So I feel like going through the different models that they have here would be a perfect opportunity to get them on for an interview to answer these questions, talk about some of the data points, etc. That's not really meant for a review now. I believe the next thing that I wanted to go through is to see, hold on. So that's what I just went through is objective 1, 2, and 3. How they're open to execute that part. So this is actually very, very important and recommended read in terms of, buying into what is being what is a plan for execution. But what I wanted to look at is the key performance indicators. So that is the next section. So let me go to that. That's the last section that I wanted us to cover for this review. So this is key performance indicators. So I want to go through this because this is how they're measuring impact, right? Which is going to be extremely important to measure the success of the project, right? So it says it delivers its strategy within an impact-based framework which targets, tracks, and measures and reports on deliverables and progress. So we mentioned that they'll be reporting on a quarterly basis. It says data is collected through the life of the project to inform reporting and tracking of results and initiatives being implemented through the community's transformation process. This is an important component for monitoring, evaluating, and reporting on all project updates and includes contributing to information related to these core areas here. Sorry about that. So it says here, updates on gains and gaps in the overall progress of the project, informing analysis, insights, and explanation of results, tracking the impact of the project and all programs on the community's beneficiaries through KPIs and the performance management framework, adjusting programs in the project to improve delivery, and the learning agenda of the project is speaking about how data is going to be collected here. So you have things like questionnaires, forms, sign-in sheets, reports, focus group results, and observations. To name a few, the results collected are monitored and shared quarterly with stakeholders. As I said, if you go to the Project Star JA website, then they'll show you the most recent quarterly report. And it says here the project-wide indicator framework consists of 50 indicators measuring and spanning across the 3 objectives for the project. Would have mentioned those before. Okay. So it says here, during the lifetime of the project, STAR expects to see sustained reductions in major crime of 40% in targeted communities. So this is one of the ways in which you'll measure the success of the project, which all experience major crime rates higher than the national crime rate. This will be achieved by increasing the employment levels in the communities by 10%. So having to see over 6,500 persons employed through the program, and engaging through supporting 3% of businesses in each community. Next, increasing access to social programs and human capital development opportunities for 30% of communities or 19,500 individuals. And these are some other things that they're saying here. So it says here that they recognize that reducing crime requires an integrated approach to development. Crime is dependent on several social, cultural, infrastructural, and economic variables, which must be addressed as a part of the ongoing initiatives. So what they're saying is they know that it's not any one silver bullet that solves the crime issue, but they're hoping, of course, again, to play a part in the process. All right, and this is a summary of a few KPIs to be achieved over the 5-year life of the program, and that's what you're seeing here. So the focus area, social protection and inclusion, the KPIs that are there, the 5-year target, and the outcomes that they're expecting from that KPI, right? So this is what you're seeing here. And this now is a 5-year budget. Again, this is one of those that I wanted to understand a little bit more of. Again, how were these numbers put together? Are these like a sort of best guess? How did they go through the process of getting these numbers together? So for example, one of the things I did look at is, for example, financing costs. There is a financing cost for year 2 here of 64 million. That was something that was I wanted to understand if it has to do with the listing. So that's something that, again, if it's gonna cost them $64 million here to raise 100 million, that wouldn't necessarily make sense. So I wanted to get some clarity on that 64 million. If it includes, I believe the goal for this year, for year 2, was 400 million. If it's 64 million to raise 400 million, I'm not even sure that is still, I just feel like that's a little high for financing costs, but I don't know if it's the fundraising. So that's one of the questions that I'm intending to ask. But for the remaining years, it's 24 million. And then for the final year, 12 million. So a total of 130 million in terms of financing costs to raise $2 billion, right? Sorry. All right, so that's one of the areas that I thought I'd ask about. You have salaries here being 33 million the first year, 28 million the second year, and so on. So just kind of understanding a breakdown of the salaries and wages, who is getting paid, what sort of salaries there, what size of the team is there, etc. I'd love to understand more about that. There are some dedicated persons to the project, and then there are some persons who maybe work voluntarily or part-time, etc. There will be costs in terms of cost to do, marketing. So for example, the marketing for the offer itself. So those are ongoing costs that will be there. I'd love to understand, for example, the management fees as well, to understand, what goes into that cost. And then there's a fundraising option here. So those three main costs here down the bottom, that comes up to about 265 million. That's one of the areas that I'd like to understand more about. So I believe that is it in terms of just the quick overview here. The rest of the document speaks to partners and stakeholders, risks to the project, anything that may impact their execution, co-brokers or selling agents. These are the contact numbers, websites, etc. And I believe that's it in terms of the document itself. Again, I will be going through and speaking with the Project Star team, hopefully in an interview sometime this week. So we'll see just, how, if we can get an answer to some of the questions that we have. So Anthony is saying, well, when will we advocate for a hospital in the country? I would have readily have supported an initiative like that. I'm not sure that, so Anthony, I would say if you have an expectation for a hospital, what I would encourage you, if you would readily support an initiative like that, I would say try to work with a hospital that's in the country right now that could, use your help in terms of funding, resources, etc. Because if you do have that desire to help a hospital, help, the medical system in any way, you should do that. Because again, what I say is that we are for giving back here at L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest. We are for outreach. And with these situations, it's just important to have a framework in place, have the competent persons in place, and then, understand that giving back, I think, is everybody's responsibility. It doesn't have to be this initiative or this project, but it has to be something. There must be some way in which you're giving back to help those who are in a lesser position than yourself, right? So Marlene says here, she's all for assisting underrepresented communities. It's a great endeavor, this project. I'm just skeptical at this time. Too much corruption and fraud. So, I mean, corruption and fraud, Marlene, is the reality of our environment. So what I say is that, again, work with the organizations, the initiatives, or the persons you trust. But the point that we always say for L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest is give back in some way, right? So if you're not comfortable with participating in this project, you do have an opportunity to ask your questions, get them answered, and then you can decide. But there's absolutely no pressure to participate. Maybe as the project goes, you may feel more comfortable down the line to contribute. It's completely up to you, all right? So let's see if there are any other questions. Elaine, you are late. We're just about to wrap up. We are going to be interviewing the Project Star team, Elaine, hopefully later this week or early next week. So you can feel free to ask your questions then. There is a Spaces tonight on Twitter at 8 p.m. that you can tune into to see if you have any questions there as well, or just to hear from what they're saying. And yeah, so that is our review. Again, I hope that I've been able to shed some light on it to answer some of your questions. Let me see if I can speak to just a few key things, right? So we mentioned, of course, that there's gonna be a minimum of 5 social stock shares being made available for each person who apply. So the minimum donation is $500. You'll be able to apply through any participating broker. once you apply and purchase those shares, the shares will not be tradable. So they'll be shown on your JCSD account, but they won't be tradable shares, but it will show you that you have, participated in this project, you've made an investment in the project. And then of course you'll be able to get information on the project each quarter through their reports that they'll be doing. And then of course they'll be doing various initiatives that were shared in terms of the outline. And as they go, they're going to share more details about that project, those kind of sub projects or activities. And again, guys, if you have any questions, reach out and we see from there, right? Yes, the video will be left up on all our platforms. We do have the interview to go with the Project Star team. That has not been confirmed yet, but we're going to have that soon. And I believe they'll be doing the rounds, taking stock, other programs, etc. So you may be able to hear from the team even before we meet with them. But Marlene, is it tax deductible? I'm not sure. That's a question that you can ask. But they are a registered charity, so I think that means yes. But yeah. All right, guys, thank you for being here. I know this was an early video, as I said, so thanks to everyone who is here. For those watching on the replay, if you have questions, post it under the video. And guys, I'll say, please, if you have doubts or concerns, ask your questions. That's the least that you can do, as in to get the information that would allow you to make a decision you're comfortable with. But don't be quick to write off the project if you have not taken the time to do your due diligence in the project, right? So thank you in advance for being here. I'll see you for our next video coming up on this channel. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next one.